Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of AuthorU, your guide to book publishing. And as always, we're looking for goodies that will be common, current, bring you insight, ahas, and really move your success to the next level. With that said, I always love to start with a saying from my little book, How to Create Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. And it's going to be a really quickie one today. That so you were rejected. What's next? Next is. Our topic today is going to be one of those things that you could get rejections with if you don't do it right. If you don't dot your I's, cross your T's, and maybe look at other elements, which we're going to get into with it today. And as we start the show, I always like to thank our sponsors, Nick Zellinger from NZ Graphics, and who does stellar interior designs, cover designs, and the like, and Rebecca Finkel from fpgd.com, who also not only does awesome designs, interior, exterior, swag, and really author-centric websites. So with that said, we have someone new. He's never been with us before. And I've known of Dan for many, 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 many years. But his expertise is in the copyright area. And certainly the hot potato out there right now is AI, artificial intelligence. So I reached out to Dan and said, would you do a program that we could talk about what's coming, what's happening, how to protect ourselves, what we should have the red flags up on, and the like. And he was doing a program for another group that I've had the pleasure of working with. So the reach out and he said, yep, I'm available. He is the co-founder and the co-owner of the Integrated Writer Services. They provide copyright consulting and clearance services. Dan is also an author. And his books include the Copyright Clearance for Creatives, which is in the second edition, and he is a contributor in a variety of news publications that will be of help to you. So you're going to find out more about it. His website is thecopyrightdetective.com, and it's something that you should maybe subscribe to and explore. With that, Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, so here we go. We're
all
going to jump into this right away because we can't even say what's old, what's new with that. Unless we're talking about last year, it's old.
Well, what we were talking about yesterday was old.
Okay, there we go. Well, let's make it really current.
Yeah, I added a new slide to my presentation this morning before the before this event. So it's a fast-moving target.
It is a very fast-moving target. So, well, let's kind of start about your background a little bit. So, how did you get into this? And when AI first bubbled up here, just within the last couple of years, although it's been some forms of it's been out here for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, were there any alarms that went off for you?
I really hadn't started thinking about the copyrightability issue for AI. I knew it was going to challenge a lot of people's professions, their livelihoods, and everything else. I got exposed to it basically through our grandson who's in college and who started using AI to help him figure out research papers and all those kind of things. So that was my initial exposure. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the person I talked to here in the morning to find out what the weather forecast is going to be, I think Alexa's actually driven by an AI platform, but she won't tell
Well, it
me.
has to be. Has to
Yeah,
be.
it's so smart.
Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
been using that since they first came out. But I was asked to do a presentation back in December. And that's when I really started thinking about, well, okay, what are the implications? Because I'm on the other side of the equation. I'm usually trying to get rights for somebody else's stuff. That's how I approach it, rather than the copyrightability of something that's been produced. So I started digging into it. And quite honestly, it's taken me since December till a week or two ago where I finally think I saw all the dots and how all the dots are connected. And mentally, I've been able to reduce it to a pretty simple equation. after reading hundreds of pages of U.S. Copyright Office documents and everything else. So it's something to be very aware of, and there are all kinds of implications to using AI when you're creating content, and some of those are legal. Some of them are protecting your rights. That's a copyrightability issue of it. Some of it is AI may give you stuff that you use, and that stuff belongs to somebody else. So now you're guilty of accidentally committing copyright infringement. So, that's the legal side. And then there's the financial side is Amazon has also weighed into this equation, and they are
Mm,
requiring disclosure of AI
mm,
generated content. And
mhm.
I was looking at that this morning, and I've got it queued up on my screen if we ever wanted to look at it, although that's probably a copyright violation to show Amazon's screen. But they
I
clearly,
would I would hope not. But are you
well, they
referring
wouldn't.
to are you
Yeah.
referring to the KDP platform?
Yes, and
Oh,
it's their content guidelines indicate that you
mhm,
clearly have to identify if you have used AI generated content.
mhm.
So now, right now, the way it works is if they find out that you used it and didn't disclose it, they can pull your books. So I mean that could have severe consequences for somebody. Um,
Well, absolutely. And you know what? Another side thing, and you probably don't go in on that, but Bowker and the My identifiers that where we go do that, they actually ask also,
hmm,
is your material AI generated?
yeah, yeah. Well, the other
So,
thing too is a lot of people are rejecting AI books because they're not that creative. They're kind of formulaic, just not all that exciting. That's the other reason it's a loss of creativity is a big no-no with this whole thing. But yeah, if Amazon pulls your books, that there goes your revenue stream for a lot of people. Right now, the best understanding I have is they are not disclosing to the public when you tell them that something's been AI generated. But who knows how long that will take place? Because if they start seeing that there's a loss in revenue stream, they may put that disclosure out there. So who knows? That's one of those fast moving targets we're talking about. Amazon could really upset the apple cart in a heartbeat.
all right. So, are there some? I'm intrigued with your comment, your statement where you said that the AI generated books aren't selling well. Where does your data come from for
No,
that?
that wasn't what I said. I said
Oh, oh, okay.
it's not received well by a lot of people if they figure out it's AI because it's just not as
Ah,
creative. No, I don't have any idea about sales figures because they're not Amazon is not disclosing that information to the public that it's AI generated. The biggest one is a
mhm,
lawsuit that came out
mhm,
not too long ago about a graphic novel and the Copyright Office granted copyright registration. Then they saw all the news and pulled the copyright registration. So she had to go through the process again. So in the presentation that I make, I get into a lot of the copyright decisions and lawsuits and everything else that are taking place. But that's the subject of the next time we get together, Judith.
I think it's an important subject. There was I did a podcast not too long ago with Nick Zillinger, and he pulled up a cover that is
Mm,
really controversial right now with a stunning wolf on it. Stunning.
mm, mm,
And it turns around it was lifted from someone else and then the AI, went to work on it. And there are suits now. And we have a major publisher involved who is the culprit.
mm. Yeah, yeah. It's easy to accidentally infringe. That's part of if you're using AI. It's easy to get in trouble other ways, but that's quick. I did one of the presentation, the slides I had in my presentation. I had pulled an image that Perplexity AI had given me,
Right.
and I thought it had generated it. Then later I realized that particular platform does not create images, and I went back and looked at it, and they had actually lifted a photograph from a website. and I had it in my PowerPoint presentation. Well, if I'd have used that, then I would be guilty of copyright infringement myself.
Hmm.
And I pulled that, actually blacked them out. But they tell you they don't use exact copies of whatever. You know, they all say they don't do that, but yet I had an image that clearly was pulled off of a website. It happens to be a cider mill up in Vermont that I'm planning on visiting next year. It actually had their name right on the coffee cup or the cider cup, if you will. That's what clued me in. So you have to be very careful if you're going to use AI. Now, there's a big distinction, Judith, and this is one of those. It's easy to understand once you understand it, until
Hmm.
it's all magic until you understand it. So the first
Yeah.
part is AI generated. That's a key phrase versus AI assisted content. So,
Okay.
so the key to this thing is, where do you start in the process? So if you are a human being and you write
Hmm.
something up, and then
Hmm.
you use AI assistance for editing and all of those kinds of things, maybe look at ideas and all that, that is AI assistance. So it's starting with you, it's starting with a human being, and then it's using AI to tweak things, to brainstorm, to edit, to refine, and all of those. That's AI assistance. And Amazon does not require you to disclose that if it's AI assisted, nor does the U.S. Copyright Office, as long as that assistance is a minimum amount. So that's kind of a key to this whole process is, where do you start from? Now, if you start from an AI generated picture or text or anything else, all you're simply doing is you are putting an AI, you're putting a prompt into AI. You're
Hmm.
asking AI to do something, to create an
Hmm.
image or whatever. So the initiation of that content is coming from an AI platform. And it doesn't really matter how much you tweak that, you're still starting from that. And that's the one that you have to disclose with Amazon, and you have to disclose that with the US Copyright Office. So they've had that requirement since March of 23. So like you say, 2 years. So this is all this has really been hitting the fan just in the last couple of years.
So let me get clarity here. I mean, I understand that the assisted, for example, if you're, if our listeners or viewers, if you're using like Grammarly
Yeah.
or something like that, your word spelling on your um, Word document program, Microsoft, you're you're being assisted. You're
Yes.
not being the generated. I think this is really important to understand. So if you're
Yes.
going into say chat, everyone chat GPT, and you start putting in a series of prompts, then they are generating for you. And if you're tweaking off of it, it's still originally AI generated. Is this what I
Yes.
understand, Dan?
Yes.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of people who could be in deep doo-doo right now.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm just going to say it that way.
Without a shovel.
With not a shovel to or muck books on
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
that. So there is something I know, you gave me some points because we're going to get back to them, but this is something that I'm really concerned about. I'm one of these, um, originally when I started publishing 40 years ago, oh my God, that I was a New York snob thinking only legitimate people, publish via New York. And that's just
Mhm.
utter nonsense, of course, before I broke away and started my own publishing house, like on book 19, I think. And now I'm at book 48. But with that said, I've always taken pride that it's always been generated up here.
Yeah.
And I still do. And as a member of the Authors Guild, I'm gonna go. We are gonna put in. I have another book coming out here in May that we will be putting in on the copyright page, or maybe you can tell us where we should put this, that it's human generated. And
Mhm.
have you seen the badge that the Authors Guild's come out with?
No, no. I know that they're in a lot of lawsuits, the Authors Guild is. They're the ones
Mhm.
way back when Google did all the scanning and everything else. So they're the ones
Hmm.
that challenged Google. Now, Google actually won that, and because the courts declared their database fair use because it was transformative. So, that's one of those landmark cases that are out there is with
Hmm.
AuthorSkill. And I haven't looked. I know there are currently 30, the last time I looked, 1st of April, there are 39 lawsuits right now dealing with AI.
Whoa,
So those are
whoa.
current cases that are ongoing. And I don't know if Authors Guild is part of those or not. I just,
They are. They
yeah,
were involved in one of the biggies that started it. I think Stephen King and some of the big names saying, wait a minute, you scraped. And of course, they didn't use that word then. You stole
yeah,
our books to
yep.
train.
Training.
Um,
That's what it's
it,
called,
it,
AI
it-
training. Yeah.
yeah, without our permission.
Yep.
Now, I will tell you, I have a friend of mine who is a has always published via New York, who got a letter out of the blue from her publisher, and I don't know if it was Simon or Random or Penguin, I mean, one of them, and saying that they would pay her like $3,000 if they could take her book and basically license it to one of
Hmm.
the AI platforms to do the scraping on, which is a different thing because that's not what they used to do. They just
No,
took it.
they used to just do it.
Yeah.
So, asking for a license is a very credible way. It's a very responsible way for AI platforms to do what they're doing, in my opinion. They're,
Hmm.
but the courts are going to be discussed. So there's a new major document coming out of the U.S. Copyright Office dealing with training and the liability and all of those kind of things, and that's yet to hit. So that'll be new rules and regulations. And my prediction is the U.S. Copyright Office will suggest new legislation dealing with training of AI platforms. So they could make that recommendation to Congress, and who knows how long that'll take. But the courts are probably going to make the decision sooner instead of later. And none of these have worked their way to the Supreme Court that I'm aware of yet. But some of these cases are close. So
Hmm.
they've been through the appellate process
Hmm.
since 2013.
Hmm.
So this stuff's been in the courts for a long time, and
Hmm.
that's who will ultimately decide as the U.S. Supreme
So
Court.
this is from the U.S. Copyright Office. It's called Healing with Training. Is that what you said? What did you say the title of the documentary that's coming out from the Copyright
Oh, no,
Office?
it's dealing with training.
Oh, dealing. Because I heard
Uh,
healing. I thought, whoa,
it,
what are we doing there?
yeah, I want to turn my volume up a little bit here, Judith. Maybe it'll help you hear it a little bit better. It's my southern accent. I'm sorry.
All right, dealing with training. All right, and that's going to be
It, it's
it-
it's just it's supposed to have been out the first quarter, so that didn't happen. So now I'm seeing predictions of the last quarter, maybe in 25. But they just sent out a new document not long ago dealing with copyrightability. So, we're talking about a fast-moving target. I did my first presentation on this subject on February the 15th. I did another one on March the 1st, and I changed about a third of the slides between the 15th and the 1st. I did another one on April the 8th, and I changed about 40% of the slides uh, from that presentation. And the next time I do a presentation, has about another 30% of changes based on what's happening. And to be honest, in better explaining my understanding of how all of this works. So the another a point to clarify, which has really helped me, is
Mhm.
all along people have been required to disclose the use of other people's stuff. So if you write a book
Yes,
and I
yes.
put a photograph that belongs to you, yeah, I have to declare in the application that I used, a photograph that belongs to somebody else. So in the past, there have been four areas that the Copyright Office calls unclaimable. So you cannot claim a work that's been registered. In other words, if I use a chapter from your book, I when I apply for a copyright, my copyright is not going to include your quotes directly from you because you own those already. So if you think about that, so the previous unclaimable were works that have been published, whether they're copyrighted or not, because they don't have to be. You don't have to file an application for copyright. Works that have been registered, items are in the public domain. So if I use something that's in the public domain, and I frequently use stuff from the US Copyright Office. So anytime I use that, if I have a copyright registration, I'm not going to get copyright for the things that are public domain. And the last thing is things that are owned by others. Now, that would be like if, so I get this with memoirs a lot of times. People have photographs, and the photograph would never have been published. So if I put a photograph in my book, I cannot claim copyright on that because I don't own it. So I never owned it. So whoever the owner of that image is actually has the copyright. Now, what's happened recently is there's now, and I'll call it the fifth element, which sounds like an old movie that I know, but now
Ooh.
there is a fifth element in all this. And again, the concept is this is not claimable. So that's how this whole thing works with the copyrightability of AI generated content. It's simply not claimable. So you have to disclose it, though. That's a new requirement. Uh, and So the fifth element is AI generated. Now remember, I used that term a while ago versus AI assisted. So if it's AI generated, it more than likely is going, and I have to qualify that, it's more than likely not going to be copyrightable, or it's not unclaimable. Now, the other little piece of that fifth element, this goes back to a monkey selfie that hit all the courts not too long ago. A fellow set up a camera out in the jungle of Indonesia, and a monkey took
Mhm.
pictures of himself or herself. The guy
Why
made a
not?
book, yeah, and PETA sued on behalf of the monkey to try to get copyright. So the
Oh
Copyright
my.
Office says, a monkey can't own a copyright. And now they're saying that a machine created content also cannot be copyrighted for that. So that's the new fifth element is,
Okay, so I have a question because I know people are thinking, wait a second. I quoted, I acknowledged, I gave the name of the book, the author, I and I quoted this on that. And that, so it's in my book as part of the narrative. And now you're saying, well, that's not cause. So how do you, is it that the author cannot file for a copyright, period?
no, that's not it. So you still get the
But
copyright.
that's where the confusion is. That's where, so
That's the way it's
how,
always been. That's the way it's
okay,
always been, though, because you what is copyrighted is the stuff you created.
exactly. I
And
know
you've
that.
disclosed that I use quotes from other people. Okay.
Hmm.
So if I quote you, yeah, and if somebody asks me for permission, I get this a lot of times. So if someone were to ask me permission to use something that I quoted from you, I cannot grant that permission because I don't own the copyright. You do, and you gave me permission to put it in my book. That's the way it's always worked. So
Hmm.
it's just that, I cannot claim a copyright for something that you created. That's all that means is, I can't claim your stuff. I have a photograph from you. I have a drawing that Nick did. I can't claim that. I got permission for that, but I cannot claim that. So that's the way it's always worked. So that's part of this is not magic with that. It's just a new type of things you can't claim copyright for. So to me, that takes some of the threat and the scare and the mystery out of it. Is it's just one more thing? Like I can't claim copyright for a public domain document. Um, if
And you know what? A lot of people don't realize that, Dan. They think if it's a public domain, they can come in and claim ownership of it.
now you can modify it. You could so
Yeah,
I could go out and I could take every year now there are new works that go into the public domain. So
sure. Winnie the Pooh just went into
there
public
you go.
domain here.
So I
Yeah.
could so I can go in and I can colorize Winnie the Pooh.
Hmm.
Now, if I were to file a copyright claim, all I'm really claiming is I added color to these pictures. That's all I could claim. So what happens frequently with this, and I had one author that it was a seminal work in economics. And there was a work that the authors allowed to lapse into public domain because you had to refile after 28 years back a number of years ago. So it
Yeah.
was just in the public domain. So what's happening is a publisher will go out and they'll write a new introduction. That's all they do.
Yep. That's what they
They'll
do.
and they'll slap a copyright notice on their copyright page. Now, if you don't know better, you'll use something that's inside the book that's in the public domain, you may contact them for permission to use something that's in the public domain. You don't have to do that. If it's in a public domain, it's in the public domain. The only thing you'd have to really get permission for is to use their introduction because that is all that they actually got copyright for.
Mhm.
So you have
So,
to be very careful in looking at what is actually copyrighted.
okay, so we all have at least the copyright page in their book. I hope you all have a copyright page in your book.
Yes.
What should be, but some don't. I've seen them that don't. Um, what should they put on and add on, whether it's you want to call it a disclaimer or something saying that the other people, I know of one book I'm aware of that they have citations
Yeah.
from a gazillion books.
Yeah. Acknowledgements page. That's the simplest way to do it. That's kind of standard. Do an acknowledgements page if you have a lot of quotes and everything else. Some people, I still get authors who are still doing footnotes and all of those kind of things and reference notes
Oh, help
and
us
all
out,
that.
please. Don't do that, everybody.
The,
Stop it.
but these are I almost want to describe them as academic works or
No, it's
historical
it's
works.
it's legal, academic. Sometimes you'll see in the accounting professions. And I'm just telling all of you for readability, don't do it. If you're
Yeah,
looking for the general person to be reading, what you should be doing is creating a very detailed endnotes and
reference notes and all those. Yeah,
and a reference. But I also believe Dan is doing a narrative citation. In Sam Smith's book, blah 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 blah, he writes, and then you do that exact quote, whatever it is. So then you help cover your tush a little bit here.
yeah, and a lot of places when you get permission, they will have a credit line they want you to use. So you need to give, even if you have permission, you still need to give attribution. And if you fail to give attribution or get permission, you've created plagiarism and infringement. So it's a double-edged sword. But if AI creates it, now, so going back to what to put on the copyright page,
If AI creates it,
yeah. So in myself, I'm going to put a statement in there saying that this was created by a human being and AI was not involved. Or if I use AI assistance, I will disclose that artificial intelligence was used to whatever. There's no requirement that you do that, and it'd be nice to actually watch the kind of language. Now, there is a new piece that's come out, and Penguin Random House and 10,000 other people did this back in October. It's called Do Not Train. I don't know if you've heard that. So they are putting
no, but I love it already. What are we not? You can't use my book for training.
they are saying that, but there's no teeth in it. They're saying that do not train, do not use this book to train your AI platform. Now, when the new rules come out of the U.S. Copyright Office, that will start putting some teeth into all this. Now, it's going to take legislation, is my prediction, before they're actually, hard teeth. The courts are the other thing that has really sharp teeth. I will sue you if you use my content. Now, the problem with this, Judith, is when you get something that's spit out by AI, how do you know your content's in there? And I'll give you an example, and it's
Gotcha.
it's in the presentation that I do. So one of the things is AI platforms, they will scrape every website that exists in the world, and now they're doing it in real time. It used to be, I think, ChatGPT used to be 2 years behind. Well, these server farms are humongous now, and they're able to do it almost in real time now in terms of getting us information. So I put in a prompt and asked for a home page for a company that offers computer clearance or copyright clearance services. In other words, I wanted to find
Mhm.
out about companies like ours and see what AI said. Well, to my surprise, and Perplexity gives you sources. So I
Mhm.
really like that. So they cited the top 5 sources that they cited actually came from our website. So, okay, I felt 2 ways about that. One, well, I'm pretty good that anybody looking at this is going to see our website on there and it's free advertising for me. That's the good news. The bad news is if they had quoted my website, I would really be upset because now they have infringed on me. Now, it didn't. So I checked all the things they did, and they did not include any direct quotes or anything else from our website. And I liked the format so well that I tweaked our website to use some of their ideas. So that ended up being AI assistance for me on our website. Now, that brings another point.
Mm.
This, so keep in mind, is why does this AI generation matter to you? If you're going to copyright it, your content, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
If you're going to put it on Amazon, that's a big deal.
yeah.
If you're going to put it on your website, marketing materials, maybe it's not a big deal
Hmm.
unless you infringe somebody accidentally.
Hmm.
So, it's a,
All right. So I'm going to go back to your line. Do not use this book for AI training. Is that what was that what your line was?
do not train.
You just say do not train.
Yeah.
And you don't, okay, now what page does that go on?
Well, Penguin Random House is now putting it on their copyright page.
On the copyright page.
Yeah.
Well, I love that as a takeaway, Dan. I think
Yeah.
that that's really important. If, unless you don't care. All right.
Yeah.
I, I'm just saying I care.
Yeah.
And and interested in I'm going to be using the badge saying for my own books that, they came out of my noodle.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's like an award badge. It looks like an award badge. So you might want to use that going forward in some of the
Yeah. I'll
things
look
you're
into
doing.
that. Or
Yeah.
I'll use AI to create one.
Uh, You may have a problem there. I wouldn't be worried about just like the Authors Guild, right?
Yeah. I actually use AI all the time to ask it questions about AI,
Mm-hmm.
and it will answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not supposed to lie, but maybe it doesn't disclose everything it knows, I think.
No, no, no. It makes up shit. And I mean, it's well known that AI makes up stuff. I mean, look at this lawyer, this
Oh,
guy who defended himself, and he quoted AI, and it was all wrong. All the
yeah,
cases were all made up.
yeah. There was one recently where the guy used AI. He had written out his testimony and all this kind of stuff. Then he used an AI
Hmm.
platform to create a voice for that.
Yeah,
And about 10
yeah.
seconds into that, the judge says, "Time out. We're not going to do this. You're going to present this yourself." So he wouldn't let the AI platform present his arguments to the court.
Oh my.
But crazy stuff's happening for sure.
Oh, it is. Okay, so let's kind of probe here a little bit further. So what are the opportunities here for authors, and what are the warnings, I think? Any other warnings on that? I that can people tell you're saying that there are a lot of these books that are created by are very formula that that they start whiffing pretty quick.
Well, just not very creative necessarily for that. So that's a
Hmm.
problem. So here's the thing: if you use AI to create a book, it's not copyrightable. I can take that book and slap my cover on it and go forth and prosper. So you're really not creating anything that you can protect. That's one of the issues. But AI is a
Hmm.
tool. So like any tool, it can be used properly, effectively, creatively, or you can use it, it ends up being destructive. So I use AI all the time. When I'm working with clients, let's say that you wanted me to get you permission to use content from something. Um, I use AI to try to identify contact information for the copyright holders. And this gets complicated. Let's say that somebody passes on, the heirs in the states still hold that copyright for, set in the
Hmm.
United States, it's 70 years after they pass. So somebody owns
Well,
that copyright. But finding errors is a challenge. So a lot of times AI has actually helped me find contact or even organizations that the copyright owner um, belong to, and I've actually gotten contacts through other organizations that somebody belongs to. I found a lady, her husband passed away 30 years ago. She lives in Austria and is able to track her down through a museum in New York that somebody actually answered. So it's a tool for me. And when I'm active on this, I might use AI 20 times a day to do research. And that's how I primarily use it, is research and fact checking and all of those kind of things. So
So are you using a site like Perplexity for the research because they cite it where their
Perplexity is
stuff
my
comes from?
go-to. And
It is your go-to. Okay.
I have the Perplexity Pro version on that. I actually got it a free membership from Xfinity. They actually had a free year's Perplexity. It's 250
Whoa.
bucks a year, and I got a freebie. And when my year's up, I'm going to pay down the 250 because I use it constantly. And it cites the sources, and you can click on a link in it. So that's what I do when I'm fact checking. I'll find sources, and then I'll go to the original, whatever they cite. Now, be very
Mhm.
careful. So I'll give you an example. I was looking up something and trying to find out the hourly rate of CPAs. Yeah, how much do they charge an hour? And I got all this information back, and it was saying, XYZ. And I clicked on some of the links, and I don't remember the exact location, but let's say it was a chat group from Bubba's Bait Shop in Biloxi, Mississippi, cited the hourly rates. Okay, that doesn't have a lot of credibility with me. So, check the source. It goes back to Ronald Reagan. Trust, but verify.
Mhm.
Make sure that if you're gonna place a bet on something, check it more than once. And I'll use one AI platform against another to see what they respond to. Or you can even ask the same question multiple times. Now, before I forget
Mm.
it, so if you're doing research and those kind of things, here's one beauty of AI. It keeps a thread of the prompts that you put in. So you ask the initial question, and let's say you want to dig deeper. You ask a follow-up prompt right there in the same session that you're in. It remembers what it answered the previous time. So you dig deeper and deeper and deeper. Or if you're doing an image, you can tweak the image, have it keep components that you want to have, and make corrections as you go through. So that's
Mhm.
another thing about it, is it's very layered, and you can keep asking prompts as much as you want. One of the lawsuits that's out there is a fellow by the name of Allen, and Copyright Office denied permission, copyright registration for his image. And in his latest submittal to the courts, he said he had used well over 600 prompts in refining an image that he created. And the U.S. Copyright Office has still denied copyrightability for that, because just using prompts is not human creativity enough to justify copyrightability.
So prompts, the reliance on prompts, because we had this discussion just last Saturday with a group of authors
Mm.
that she says, "Oh yeah, I always start with prompts." So now what I have learned, all right, it is AI generated.
Yes, yes. And that's your
Um,
red flags.
that is the red flag. Your prompts, so if you're doing your marketing campaign, everyone, that's a different animal. We're talking
Yes.
about writing here.
Yeah, we're talking about something that you want to protect, copyrightability, or something you want to sell on Amazon. That's
Mhm.
the other incentive. To me, for a lot of people, I don't care if it's registered or not, but I want to sell it on Amazon, so I better listen to what's going on. Uh,
Yeah, and of course it could change next week, as you have said,
yes.
um, and you experience it time out. So, Dan, can you take us down a rabbit hole a little bit here? If someone contacts, the copyright detective offices, and they're trying to track something down to get permission to use it, what's the process? What's the
Oh,
process?
what's my process?
Yeah.
Okay. In the U.S., we've had a series of copyright laws that changed the rules. So
Hmm.
the first thing I have to do is I have to find out when it was published. And that tells me which set of rules apply. So during a certain period of time, and I could find that slide for you. It's actually it's on Cornell's website. It keeps a really good chart on it, and it changes every year now. So every year a new batch of stuff goes into the public domain. So I have to find out when it's copyrighted. Sometimes you had to put a copyright symbol on the works. Sometimes you have to renew the registration after 28 years. So I find out whether or not it's potentially copyrightable or not. I go into the U.S. Copyright Office database. I do searches. I did searches on your books this morning, Judith. I don't remember how
Oh,
many you had in there, but you have a bunch in there. Uh,
I do.
and I can get a lot of information, and that's where you see this disclosure of other materials that are used. It actually shows up, and I can actually
Hmm.
print out that out of the database. Now, the Copyright Office used to you could only do searches from things that were registered after 1978. They're now building that database and they're working backward, and they have 16 million new entries that
Oh,
they're plugging into the system. So there's going to be a
whoa.
huge overhaul of the Copyright Office and the user interface. Right now, if you try to register, if you apply to register an item with the Copyright Office, it looks like you're back in the Pac-Man age with the graphics and everything else, and that's going through a major overhaul. I mean, it's a pain. I think they have 28 different screens, and you have to input the same information multiple times but all that's in overhaul. There's a webinar I sat in on a couple of weeks ago, and it's going to be a lot better if you're copywriting your stuff coming down. So
So maybe we need to look at the question if that because there were certain rules that said if you especially for fiction authors as they want to get it copyrighted if there's a possibility to get lifted
mhm,
within I think it's is it 90 days from publication? Is that
that's what
is
they
that the
recommend. They recommend.
that's okay.
Here's a
Um
reason why. Here's a reason why, Judith,
mhm,
because they changed the rules not too long ago
mm,
that you have to have your certificate of registration before you can sue somebody for copyright infringement. You have to have that registration in hand, that certificate. So in the past, you just had to file. Now there's also a small claims court that's an exception to that, but the general
mhm,
rule is you need that to sue someone. If you don't, then you have to get it registered before you can bring a lawsuit. Well, you don't know how many books they've sold of yours while you're waiting to get your book
mhm,
actually registered.
mhm.
And one of the new changes
Oh, yeah,
is,
I had a situation, Dan, where actually I had the rights back from the publisher of
mm,
a book, officially in letter, and they continued to sell it and never told me. In fact, they sold
wow,
foreign rights. Foreign
wow.
rights. This is and this it was McGraw-Hill, everyone, if you want to know who it was. Uh, and they continued to sell it, and I happened to did I was like doing you, kind of playing around, search where are my books in libraries, and it
Mhm.
showed up in Belgium,
Oh yeah.
and it showed up in other places, and the book had been published in French that I had never seen
Mhm.
that I had never, and I had a friend in Quebec get a copy for me and send it. But, and then, and, clearly it was infringement. They
Yep.
were selling stuff. They had not disclosed it. They kept the monies. They did that. And I had to make had to come a book meeting with myself. Did I want to go after McGraw-Hill?
Yeah.
And the reality is, you're talking big bucks here,
Deep pockets.
deep pockets. And I made it, we sent them a letter,
Yeah.
but I didn't pursue it. I mean, clearly they were thieves, but that, I mean, everyone, you have to realize how much you're going to put into the game,
Yeah.
here and just be aware. So
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I did the walk away. I did it. I don't, if they continued selling the book, I have no idea. But with infringement, you have to prove how many books they sold, how much money they made. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that.
That's why you do it within 90 days. You don't have to worry about all of those kinds of things. And again, the examiner on when I submitted a work actually brought up the 90 days. So I mean that's what they. By the way, this this presentation, this title right here, that is my PowerPoint presentation, and I actually registered the copyright for my PowerPoint presentation. and it has
Wow.
AI generated and AI assisted content and all kinds of other things in there. It has public domain content and everything else. And I was successful in registering the copyright for that. So anyway, but I had to, so that's part of what informed me. That's one of the reasons why my presentations changed, is because that process really informed me about what's important and what's not. And I didn't have the vocabulary when I initially submitted the application for that. And I actually ended
Hmm.
up doing emails with the register, which just surprised me that they would get so personally involved. But we're exchanging emails, phone call, and even a Zoom conference with the examiner in the U.S. Copyright Office. And he was trying to understand what I had done. And I didn't have the language yet to explain to him that this was AI assisted, this was AI generated, and et cetera. So had I had that language, I could have made it a lot easier for me and a lot easier for the examiner. But
Hmm.
yeah, so the presentation is copyrighted. Now, I'm also going to have to copyright it again
But
because
it keeps changing.
I changed it. Now, by the way, from a copyright perspective, I am making derivatives of what is copyrighted, and only the
Mhm.
author has the right to do that. So if somebody, and there is a
Mm.
video. I think I sent you the link, Judith. I don't know if you've seen the video yet, but one of the presentations I made, they made a recording with my permission, and I used the recording as my submission to the Copyright Office, because not only are the slides registered, my audio narration is copyrighted, and that comes up as a text on the copyright registration certificate. Is the text, which is me speaking, is copyrighted. In this case, it's
Mm.
like today, it's spontaneous, so there's no script. There's absolutely no AI generation. It's all Dan generation, if you will, and
Mhm.
it's all copyright protected.
Well, so we're talking about this registration. How does the U.S. Copyright Office determine? Like they got on the Zoom for you, they got on the phone with you, you had
That's
emails. How do they determine they're going to register it? Are there key elements that they're looking for
it
that
goes
will pass the test?
it goes back to the two terms that I used. What in this presentation was AI generated
Hmm.
and what was AI assisted? If it's AI assisted, then
Uh-huh.
it's potentially copyrightable. Now, if I were to read a book like that, how can I tell? And that's part of the problem, is how can you tell what is and what isn't? So in the presentation, I actually got permission from two or three of these people that are having court cases because they were awarded a level of copyright protection for their artwork that they actually created. So rather than take a chance, I simply got permission from them to use their images in the PowerPoint presentation and any recordings of the PowerPoint presentation. So I just did what I needed to do, which is get permission, and that's what we're all about. Is get yeah. Sometimes you're better off asking forgiveness and permission, but in copyright you're better off asking permission than forgiveness, because forgiveness may be very expensive.
Hmm. Yeah, it can be very expensive. So, what are the risks? What kind of risks do we have to look at? Understanding, I think you've been very clear about, is it AI generated or AI assisted? I really see the line,
That's a
you know,
key.
yeah, on that and how important it is. What other risks could authors run if they use any AI in their works?
Accidental infringement if AI actually copied somebody else's stuff verbatim without giving credit or permission or anything else. So, uh, in my mind, I would never directly quote anything AI generated. You mentioned earlier, I would
Oh,
paraphrase it.
good. Okay, don't directly quote AI generated stuff.
Yeah, I would paraphrase it. Well, I use
Yes,
it for ideas. So I take an idea and I put it in my own words. Now, if you start from the other direction, I write up something and I submit it to AI and ask it to do something to it, make it more readable or make it for the
right.
seventh grade reading level. That's AI assistance. Now, the Copyright Office,
Mm.
uh, I don't know how to pronounce this word. It's Latin. I think it's de minimis. If you use a small amount of AI assistance, You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to disclose that. So the key is a small amount. Now, if it goes in and, if you were to compare, and part of this is documentation. And that's a nice thing about Perplexity is it keeps a library of every prompt I've ever put in. So if the examiner asked me, show me what this was before and what it is after, with Perplexity, I would be able to do that. So it's like having a Word doc and you go in and you have track changes in a Word doc. So, what is
Mm-hmm.
it before and what is it after? So if I were using AI Assistant
Mm.
to heavily edit a work, I would make sure I keep the first thing that I put in and then what was changed, and I would run it through track changes and be able, if the examiner asked me, I would have that at my fingertips to be able to show that this is what AI actually changed. Now, the examiner is a human being who's going to make the decision. Now, okay, so what if they
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, well, you can't claim that. All right, but everything else in the book is claimable. It's just, you just don't claim that. And it's going to be up to somebody else to figure out what piece of that, but at least you have a track record, if you will.
Yeah, but I think that's where huge confusion can come from, Dan.
Oh,
That
yeah.
I mean, and I almost think of this as a nightmare in some ways of what's claimable and what's not. How do you differentiate it? How
But
can
again,
you even?
the overall work is still claimable. So
Mhm.
it's just that, but again, that's part of the dark side of this whole thing is,
The
and
dark side.
it's not black. Well, the only black and white is I created it all by myself. It's copyrightable. It all came out of my head. It all came out of Judith's head or whatever.
Hmm.
I used AI to generate it, all of it, and all I did is put in prompts. That's the black side. It's not copyrightable.
Hmm.
Everything else, the AI assistant is the gray area, and it's going to depend. It really is going to depend on
So the more you can tweak that baby and bring it back into your words, the better it is. That's
or use your words and tweak it minimally.
yes. Well, yeah, use your words in the first place. All right,
Yeah,
Dan, we only have 3 minutes left.
I saw
Ugh.
that. I saw
But
the flag.
ugh. So
But
um
so my advice is don't be afraid of this, but learn how to use it ethically, morally,
mhm,
creatively, but
mhm.
don't let it be the tail wagging the dog.
And maybe for all of you, we want to say do discover the power of perplexity because that might help cover your tush in many, many, many areas. Last question. I want do it that for filing for copyright. Is this a DIY thing that people just don't worry about it, even though it's dinosaurian right now until they get the new overs, or they should get help?
Uh, Ask that differently. I got lost in translation there somewhere.
All right, you refer to that the filing the copyright is archaic right
Oh,
now.
oh,
They're doing updates. Is this something where an author should go ahead and jump in? I'll go through the 28 models to get there, or is it better to hire someone to do it for them?
well, keep in mind 90 days. And I don't know when we're going to see a new engine come out of the U.S. Copyright Office. So keep
Got it.
90 days
Okay.
in mind. If you can't figure it out, get somebody to do it. Now, when I have legal questions and I don't know the answer, I go to an attorney. So I always suggest something. If you don't know how to do it and you have questions, ask an attorney.
All right. So we gave Dan's website, the copyrightdetective.com.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Just add a .com right there. The copyrightdetective.com for sure.
All right. Well, Dan, so thank you so much. We are going to be doing actually a webinar
Yep.
on this. On and this is where we'll see the slides and things on that. But there's enough information, I think, for all of you to wisen up. I have a big star that I wrote here, was it do not train, putting this on the copyright page. I think that that's wise that we all might want to get into the habit of it and
Yeah.
use that and make reference. If you really are creating it with your noodle here, you know what? I wouldn't say created by my noodle, but I would come up with a different phrase
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Yeah. We have there was no AI used in the creation of this work. That's a simple
That's
phrase.
right. Just leave it like that. All right. Dan Miller, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Look forward to working with you next month. Everyone, have a great writing and publishing week, and we'll see you next week.